Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Infernus, and welcome back to another comic book review. And before we start, let me just say that I wish I could do the subject of this review for like the 40th episode or something so we could have another milestone. But at the same time, it's a movie that I've wanted to rewatch for a while now. So let's talk about what many people consider the best movie in the MCU, Avengers Infinity War. Where to begin? This is quite possibly one of the biggest comic book movies of all time, and there's just so much it does right. It's insane. And that's the positive. Starts with the movie's antagonist, the big guy right up here, Thanos. Now, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of things got better for me when I watched this again. When I watched it the first time, it was kind of just an experience because I already knew what was going to happen because of the memes. Here, I knew what was going to happen, of course, but mainly because I had already seen the movie. So it made for a much better viewing experience, especially when judging Thanos. I don't know how I didn't realize during the first viewing how formidable this guy was, but with only two stones, he's scary. Like with the Power Stone and the Space Stone alone, he already establishes himself as a major threat by destroying the entire Asgardian ship. And as he gets more stones, he becomes even more formidable and even more scary with the way he's able to shift reality to trick the Guardians into giving him Gamora, how he's able to turn back time and rebuild Vision so he can take the Mind Stone himself. They're able to do a lot with him with these stones, and he's already a big, strong, muscular built character anyways. So I imagine he'd probably be able to stand on his own because like they already proved in the first 10 or so minutes that he's able to hold his own against the Hulk. And the Hulk is one of the most powerful Avengers we have. Then again, he is one of the ones who's still alive, so I guess that would make sense. But it's not just his strength and abilities that makes him a great threat, but it's also his motive. I'm going to say this right now. I don't agree with Thanos' methods at all, but I do sympathize with him. He's the sole survivor of his dead world of Titan, which he said was a thriving civilization that had the issue of overpopulation with too many mouths to go around. When he brought up the idea of slaughtering half the population, the fellow Titans called him a madman, as they should have. Seriously, this guy is a psychopath. And of course, he was right, but that doesn't mean he's right. He's a true believer in his own cause, and that's what makes him great, but I do not agree with his methods at all. Now, would I say he's my favorite villain ever? Of the villains we've gotten for the Avengers, I can definitely say that, you know, he's not really competing with Ultron or Loki anymore. Like, they were fine in their respective movies, but Thanos is fantastic. But it's not just Thanos makes the this is actually I'm actually going to go through this point really quickly because it's kind of hard to articulate into words and explain with reasons. But I think the way that they bring the different characters together in their different groups is actually genius and it makes perfect sense. And what I mean by that is mainly just the ways that they get Steve and Tony's individual teams together because of course they're not on speaking terms, but I'll get to that later. But I love the way that they bring the teams together. Also, this movie has the word war in its title, and it takes advantage of that. A lot of the scenes here that would feel, pretty small in some other movies, like a simple fight in a town, or a fight in nowhere, or a war in Wakanda, like we already had that last one in the previous movie. They all they felt decently sized in the previous movies. Here they feel big. And I think that's mainly because everyone knows what will happen when Thanos gets his hands on the stones. So because the stakes are higher, the scenes feel bigger. And like I said, we already got a big battle of Wakanda in Black Panther, but because the stakes there were just a kingdom being ruled by an unworthy king, it kind of felt pretty small in comparison. It felt very self-contained. Here it doesn't. Here, the Battle of Wakanda feels extremely important and massive. And even scenes like the opening scene, or scenes like, Cull Obsidian and Ebony Maw fighting Iron Man and Doctor Strange, or when Corvus Glaive, I forget if it's Glaive or Glade, Corvus GLA something, and Proxima Midnight are trying to kill Vision to get his Mind Stone, because we know what's at stake, those scenes have a lot more weight than they already would, or more weight than they would in any other movie. And speaking of more weight, this movie actually gives the movie that kicked off the phase more weight. Yeah, believe it or not, this movie actually gives Captain America Civil War even more weight than it already had. That movie broke up the Avengers, and this movie shows the outcome of that conflict and that result. Because the Avengers are in separate groups, they're not unified as one collective whole, they're in two separate groups of characters. It makes it easier for Thanos to collect the stones because he has less people to worry about. Especially with the order that he gets the stones in, he actually collects the stones in an order that actually makes sense. Wow, that was not easy to say for some reason. But yeah, he collects the stones in a way that makes sense. He gets the Power Stone pretty easily. Of course, the Mind Stone, not the Mind Stone, the Space Stone he gets pretty easily from Loki because, Loki tries to be a genius but ends up failing. Of course, he gets the Reality Stone by getting to nowhere before the Guardians. And he gets the Soul Stone in what's honestly a pretty tragic scene. But I'm honestly wondering if he was able to see what groups he was up against, because he goes for the Time Stone first and then the Mind Stone. He goes to the Time Stone, which is guarded by less characters. It's just half the Guardians and then Team Iron Man. And of course he takes them out pretty quickly. And then he goes to Wakanda and uses that stone to resurrect Vision. It's like, I guess that's a bit more good things I can say about Thanos, is that he's really smart. But at the same time, it also just shows that the outcome of Civil War, the breaking up of the Avengers, made it easier for him to win because he has less people to deal with at a time. So basically, Zemo's plan working ended up causing probably the most devastating event in the MCU to date because of the fallout of Captain America Civil War on the conflict in this movie. Now, of course, he lost in Endgame because they're more of a collective whole, but still, it really goes to show how great hold on. It really goes to show how great the storytelling in the MCU can be sometimes, when such long form storytelling can lead to a villain winning and having such catastrophic results. Now, of course, I've been singing the praises of this movie to the high heavens because it deserves it. But is there anything that I would say is wrong with the movie? One thing, it's very minor but still worth mentioning, and that's with Star-Lord. Now, this isn't to the level of how Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 treated Drax, where he went from being the stone cold comic relief in the first movie to the mean-spirited asshole in Volume 2. But here it still feels like Peter Quill is acting out of character, because he seemed to show a lot of confidence in the previous Guardians movies, but here he feels challenged by the presence of Thor and feels the need to impress others. And it's just the way he acts, all immature. It just doesn't feel like Star-Lord. Even how he acted when he found out what Thanos did to Gamora, that also just doesn't feel like the same character that we had been with in the previous two Guardians movies. Now, obviously, it's not a movie-breaking flaw because it's one character who doesn't exactly feel right in a movie with quite possibly the second biggest cast in the franchise. I say second biggest because Endgame exists, but it's still a blemish on this otherwise amazing movie. And yeah, that's really one of the best words I can use to describe this movie. It's just amazing. Extremely well crafted, genius in other aspects, and absolutely amazing that they were able to pull off a movie of this scale with these kind of stakes. And for that, what else were you expecting? This is easily one of the best comic book movies in recent years, easily one of my favorites. I put it at the number 2 spot in my original ranking because I felt like that's where it needed to be. This time, I'm comfortable putting it there because I want to put it there. Of course, Civil War is still number 1, but this movie has absolutely earned its spot as the runner-up. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review of Avengers Infinity War. I can definitely say I'm a lot more proud of this one than I am with Morbius, and trust me, I'll get to that in what'll hopefully be my next video. But if you enjoyed, you know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with all that generic crap. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.